Taurus, welcome to your weekly reading. Let's get started and see what energy is around Taurus for the week ahead. Taurus, Sun, Moon, and Rising. Let's see what energy is around you. Now, keep in mind, my friends, these are general readings and may not resonate for everyone. So make sure to check out your other placements to receive a complete picture. And if you'd like a personal reading, you can find the link to that in the description below, or you can email me to set that up. All right, my friends, let's see. What's the current energy around Taurus for the week ahead? What is Taurus stepping into for this week? Oh, card fell on the floor. Okay, so we're seeing, okay, interesting. This is very interesting. We see complacency, trickery, and renewal. This is telling me a very interesting story. This to me tells me, Taurus, that you've had a week where you're getting complacent with something. You're about to you're resigning yourself to a certain state of mind that's affecting your sense of security, your identity, your ability to be grounded in the now. I think you're having a moment of complacency with that, and it's actually an illusion. Okay, so this complacency, it's almost like it's an illusion that once you walk up to it and you walk through it, you realize that it was about your willingness to walk through it all along. And this brings in a sense of renewal. So what this tells me for you, Taurus, is that right now you're moving through a cycle in your life where things may be very disturbed, in the sense of everything might feel like it's falling apart. But what you must keep in mind is that your life is actually falling together. It's not falling apart. And that's where I feel like you need to distinguish that in your mind first, because essentially the illusion is existing. It exists in your mind. Everything that's happening in your outer world is a reflection of your inner world, not the other way around. That's often what we believe. We believe that our inner state is a reflection of what's happening around us. But actually what's happening around you is a reflection of your inner state. So the changes you make on an inner level are going to start to show up in the external world. So I feel like your complacency is showing up in your external world, and it's being presented to you as things falling apart, as cycles completing, as feeling like, as those cycles complete, that you're lost and that your sense of security is now removed. But actually it's making the way for some renewal. There's a season here. You can see in the complacency card, it's clearly winter. And you can see here in the renewal card that the snow is starting to melt on one side here. The snow is melting and the spring is entering. And so I feel like you're at a point this week where you must see through the illusions that you may be buying into. You may be believing these illusions and finding yourself feeling very impatient, very frustrated. You might be feeling like everything is deteriorating and you don't know who you are anymore. But the truth of who you are has not changed. It's just the landscape changing around you. And as I cut the deck, no surprise, there's the Tower and there's the Eight of Pentacles. So this could be hitting you in terms of work. When I see the Eight of Pentacles, this could be affecting you in the sense of something that you're very good at that's no longer sort of creating the same results because it needs to be renewed. It's almost like you've been doing something that you're very good at, granted, but it's now become a part of your identity, and it's almost like it's shifting because your identity is shifting. You may no longer identify with this as being who you are, and so as a result in the external world it shifts. Because, and that's why we're seeing the Tower. So a structure that has been long-standing in your life is shifting. A long-standing structure in your life is beginning to shift, to reveal to you that it's time to renew that definition. It's not that you're no longer secure in your identity. It's that your identity has changed. Your way of identifying yourself is changing. And that's coming from within. That's coming from within. And so let's see what the tarot cards will reveal. I knew we were going to see the Tower. Let's see if it appears here. There's the Queen of Pentacles, Queen of Swords, and the Seven of Swords. Love that. So there you go. As you are trying to understand who you are in terms of this Queen of Pentacles energy as someone who is self-reliant and someone who is very independent and someone who knows themselves, is now seeking the truth about something going on in their life. There's the illusion, the Seven of Swords. It's almost like these cards should go like this to match what we saw here in the chakra cards. So you might be feeling like something in your life is shifting in a way that's making you feel very complacent, but it's shifting because you're seeking the truth about something about yourself. I feel like it has to do with something to do with an aspect of yourself that you use to define who you are, but it may no longer fit as a definition for you, and there's nothing wrong with that. But your mind is playing a bit of a trick on you right now with the Seven of Swords and this trickery energy, convincing you that without this, you are lost. And that could be that couldn't be further from the truth. Seeing the Queen of Pentacles here with the renewal energy tells me that you're entering into a new chapter of your life and a new way of identifying who you are to yourself. Like this is a time to gain some measure of control over the mind, because whatever you sort of start to shift within, you're going to start to see more evidence of that in the external world. So like our inner changes, our consciousness, it's what creates our material reality. So whatever you truly believe, you're going to start to see it. And that happens no matter what. And there's no matter what you believe. And there's the Tower showing up on the bottom of the deck. So again, this is confirmation for me that major structures in your life, major markers in your life that you use to say, this is who I am, are changing. And they're changing because I think you must have initiated a cycle where you thought to yourself, who am I? Right? You asked the question. And when you ask the question, the universe conspires to bring you the answer, because we are creators, all of us. And because we're creators, we use our mind to set that creative process in motion. And when we do that, it becomes a sort of like a movie that's playing to give us the answers to which we are seeking. The questions we have asked become part of the landscape in the external world. The outer world reveals to us what the answer is, if that makes sense. And so you've been asking some questions about who you are. You're seeking truth. You're trying to understand yourself on a deeper level. And as a result, things in your life are starting to shift and collapse around you. And that shift and collapse is not something, it's probably bringing up fear or loneliness or a feeling of that lack of security, which can feel like scary. Basically, in this human reality, it can feel very scary, but it's almost like you're focusing on this in a way that you can tweak it. You can tweak it by getting excited about these changes, because you're about to get the answer to the question you've been asking. Who am I? And who am I today, right? Because I don't feel like I am who I was yesterday or a year ago or 5 years ago. And it's interesting. It's interesting. It almost feels like the reading is trying to guide you to shift your perspective on this, to see the trickery in it, to see how sometimes there is this deep, deep self-sabotage that happens on an inner level when we look at the self. And what is renewal, we may see as destruction, but it's the same. This destruction is renewal. It's very interesting. I feel like this is affecting you in a very material way. Like this is we're seeing the root chakra for a reason. This is affecting your grounding, your security, your identity, your feelings of safety. It could be affecting you in terms of work, relationships, your sense of self. This is a root chakra. It's the sense of self. And the interesting thing is that if you can ground into that root chakra, you'll release those fear emotions and you'll start to see the renewal. You'll start to feel that Queen of Pentacles energy that says, no matter what is happening in my reality, all is well. And everything is moving me towards my highest good. Even if there's stuff that has to float away to sea, right? Even if the tower comes down, the lightning is the truth that you've been seeking. And it's tearing down structures that no longer serve you. And that tearing down of structures can initiate a fear cycle that can distract you from sort of the reality of what's going on here. And what's going on here is you're moving into a new phase. You're moving into a renewal period. This is a cleanup. You're moving into a cleanup. So we see Justice and the Nine of Cups coming out to clarify for you. What this tells me is that it's really time to get into balance with focusing on your desires instead of focusing on your fears, because whatever you focus on is what's going to show up. So use that and focus on your desires. What do you desire to see as the path ahead? Not what do you fear to see as the path ahead. Somewhere along the lines we received this, I think on a human collective level, this idea that if we focus on what we fear, we can somehow avoid it and sidestep it, and it won't happen because we have a plan for it. But the thing about that is that if you focus on it, that's what's going to show up. And so really putting that visualization in your imagination of this idea of renewal and focusing on your desires. And as things shift and change in your life, surrender to them. Don't fight it. Don't try and rebuild the tower as it's crumbling into the sea, because it's got to go. It's got to go. A new structure is going to be in its place. And when I see Justice, that tells me that new structure is going to be in balance. It's going to serve you, and it's going to serve others. It's going to be of service. It's something that is almost feels like it's going to bring you back into a new state of balance. This feels very transformative. And I feel like it's the kind of transformation that's happening in the material world right in front of your eyes. Like you can see this transformation as it's happening, but your job is to stay focused on your desires and to not make it the focus. Don't make the fear the focus. The fear of the change, don't make that the focus. That's where this reading is guiding you. And we see the Ace of Cups coming through here. So that tells me that you're being given a new emotional beginning, but it begins from a state of renewal. And no mud, no lotus. So you're in the mud right now. You're in that state of transition. And it's hard for the lotus to push its way up through the mud and then bloom. But once it's there on the surface blooming, it looks beautiful and it feels effortless and it's just there. But the work that it took to get there, the transformation for that lotus to come up through the mud and find its way to the surface to bloom is a journey. And you're in that phase. You're in cleanup right now. You're making your way to the surface. And so it would be distracting to focus on the things shifting out. And that's where we're seeing this Four of Cups on the bottom of the deck, where you're overly focused on the things that are shifting instead of what could be coming in What have you been manifesting? What have you been focusing on? Where do you feel that things need to shift? Because whatever inner changes you feel, you're going to see them manifest in your outer reality. And when we're open to that and we surrender to it, and we're sort of engaged in that transformation with our desires as our focus, then, I feel like seeing the Ace of Cups says that there's so much abundance around this for you, and there's so much emotional fulfillment around this for you. And it's really a time of balance where you're stepping into this justice of self-justice, it feels like, where you're no longer interested in things that are illusions. You're no longer interested in something that's half true or false, like you're wanting to ground into truth, but to get there, some things have to shift. And that's where you are right now. You're experiencing that shift. Let's see what Taurus is being guided to surrender to, or surrender entirely. Let's see, for Taurus. Is Taurus need to surrender or surrender to? Okay, 2 cards. Oh, love that. Okay, so as I was saying about focusing on your desires, we see surrender to passion. So getting out of your head and feel the fire in your belly, focus on the people or activities that ignite your passion and let that flow. So really focusing on that, and then surrendering this idea of low self-esteem. That's coming from this complacency. That's coming from this trickery that your mind is saying, well, if you're no good at doing that anymore, then that must mean that you're just no good. Instead of it meaning it's because that phase is finished. That phase is finished. It's now time to discover this new passion. Oops. So this renewal is moving you from one thing to another, and somehow in sort of almost like an energetic misunderstanding, you're interpreting some phase needing to come into end so it can renew into something else. You're interpreting that as you failing, or you no longer having an idea about something that you used to have a strong idea about. It doesn't mean that. It really feels like it just means that is needing a renewal. It's, there are natural cycles and seasons that we walk through all the time, and we don't get angry about it. Like when it moves from spring to summer, we're not like, why did that have to happen? I was enjoying spring. I don't want summer. We accept it. We surrender to it, and we say, well, it's summer now. And it's the same thing when summer becomes autumn or autumn becomes winter. We can become very complacent with some of these things in our life that change. But it's funny how when things that seem like they're outside of our control change, we learn to accept them, and we learn to see it as a new cycle that's just renewing itself, and it's natural. But when it's something in our life that does that, we create all kinds of illusions in our mind that say, well, you're no good, or you're just not good at that anymore, or you don't deserve it, you're not worthy of it. We create all of these kind of illusions in our minds for explaining things that just need renewal. It's just time for something else. And it may have been initiated because you asked a question. You said, who am I? So the answer must reveal itself to you. And I feel like that's what's happening. So your guidance, my dear Taurus friend, is to surrender that low self-esteem and release this idea that this means something about you being less than you are, or less worthy, or not enough. It doesn't mean that. And by believing it means that, trust me, you're going to see more things that show you that a confirmation of what you believe about yourself. So if you really do start to believe this low self-esteem narrative, this trickery of the mind trying to convince you of something that is the opposite, right? It's the opposite. Your interpretation of what's happening is the opposite of what is truly happening. I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you so much, Taurus. I hope this has resonated and makes sense. Try to bolster yourself up by surrendering to things that make you feel alive and ignited, and your passion, right? Focus on that. Focus on your desires. Focus on new beginnings. Focus on renewal. Focus on the idea that everything renews, and so do you. And that doesn't mean that you're not good enough. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm sending you so much love and light, and I look forward to reading for you again soon. Take care.